When I say they want to be good for real, I mean, woe to those who call evil good and good evil. There's a lot of that going on in the world today. I'm no longer a believer in the Bible as a revelation of the Word of God, but I can still recognize the words we ought to be given attention to. And that's one of them. That's one of the words. That's a verse from the Bible that ought to get our attention. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil. You know the other one? It goes hand in hand with this one. And it's what leads to calling evil good and good evil. If the light that is in you is darkness, how great is the darkness? That verse should send chills down our spines. Because we know. And the reason why we know that we know from the variety of belief as well as the prominence of the certainty of belief, the unfalsifiability of belief. We know from the variety of belief as well as from the prominence of unfalsifiable belief. These beliefs cannot all be cannot all be true. There's too much variety. There's too much conflict between them. So we know, at least, that a large portion of the global population believes in their darkness as light. They can't all be in the light. There's too much variety. There's too much conflict between beliefs. They can't all be in the light. That means, particularly if they're all in conflict, and they all claim to be the one light. They all claim to have the one light and that everyone else is in darkness. And that is the nature of belief. You believe something, it is the light, and everyone else is in darkness. If everyone believes that way, that means the majority of believers are in darkness, believing their darkness to be light. If one belief is the light, that means all the other believers that believe that their belief is the light are actually in darkness. And if the light within you is darkness, how great is the darkness? Which means they can't see it. They can't see that they're in darkness. Believing it to be light, they can't consider it to be darkness. They're trapped in their darkness because their darkness appears to them as light. That's why, if the light that is in you is darkness, how great is the darkness? Because you see that darkness as light. It appears to you as light. But in reality, if it's actually darkness, if it doesn't harmonize with what in reality is true, is good, is meaningful, is sustaining, then reality will bite you for it. But the problem with this kind of belief is that when reality bites you, you associate reality biting with actual darkness. But everyone else is in darkness, not you. When you view your darkness, it appears to you as light, and so you can't associate that enlightened belief with the effects of an endarkened belief. And so you find some other way to explain the effects. It couldn't have come from your enlightened belief, because those kinds of bad effects, reality's bite, those are the effects of an endarkened cause. My cause is enlightened. It can't possibly produce those effects, so those effects must be because of something else. If your darkness appears to you as light, that light is unfalsifiable. And then having that unfalsifiable darkness that appears to you as light, you continue operating in the world, oftentimes crusading in the world, under the ruling force of this darkness that appears to you as light, because beliefs generate values, values generate desires, and desires drive choices. Desires drive your operations. And those desires are based on your values, and those values are based on your beliefs, and your beliefs are darkness that appear to you as light, but actually being darkness, they cause you to value what is evil as what is good, and to value what is good as what is evil. And then that generates your desires for evil rather than good, but you think that it's good, and your desires against good rather than evil, but you think that it's evil. And then that drives your operations in the world as you carry out evil that you think is good and seek to quash good that you think is evil. All because of the darkness that appears to you as light. If the light that is in you is darkness, how great is the darkness? It is at the root of calling evil good and good evil. It has everything to do with what we believe, how we came to believe it, and how we cling to those beliefs. A house and open country is a method meant to address all of that. I am done with unfalsifiable belief. The world has had enough of unfalsifiable belief of all kinds. The world has had enough. Religious, quasi-religious, non-religious, atheistic, ideological, you name it. Everybody knows that they know that they know that their belief is light and not darkness. We've seen enough of the effects of that. I'm done with that. It makes no sense to continue with that. It made no sense for me to continue with that in my own life when I was disillusioned of my unfalsifiable belief. I looked at that and I saw how I had become disillusioned and the state that I was in under that illusion. How I had become illusioned. I looked at how I had become delusional in the first place and the state that I was in maintaining that delusion and the threat that that delusion posed to me and my family. The risks that came with it. And in a moment of intellectual honesty, I said, I don't want that. Now, I still didn't know at that point whether or not my light was actual darkness. I didn't know. I just knew I was at risk of it. And so I had to spend years. It took me at least 4 years before I was completely disillusioned. Because I wasn't willing to abandon a 40-year belief system that I had been devoted to and crusaded in the name of. I wasn't going to abandon all that on a whim. I wasn't going to abandon it simply because it hinted at falsifiability. It hinted at being wrong. No, I needed to know. I wasn't going to abandon it that quickly. I needed to know. Because it was possible that it wasn't wrong. It just wasn't as much of a certainty as I'd always thought it was. It could have been that it was still the most likely probability to be true. Out of all the options that are out there, it just could have been the most likely belief system to be most in harmony with reality. That was a possibility. So I wasn't going to abandon 40 years of devotion to it. I had invested my life in this belief system. I made a career out of it. I'm not kidding. My chosen career path, I screwed myself because my chosen career path was based on having this belief system. And once I became disillusioned, everything that I built, gone. I have no career anymore. Starting over from scratch with a master's degree that I can't use. I had incentive to remain in that belief system. But intellectual honesty drove me to question it because I knew that this is bigger than my career. This is bigger than the incentives to stay illusioned. I had to know what reality had to say about it. So I spent years trying to honestly discern if I had accepted darkness as light. And that's when A House in Open Country was started. It was me developing for myself a method for finding the truth. And it began with me stepping outside the dome. I had to step outside of the dome of my belief system because that dome is a lens on the world. I had to get out from under that lens and look at reality for itself, apart from all messengers, apart from all messages, apart from all revelations. I had to let reality reveal itself. And so I had to step outside of the dome to let reality do that, and that is where I carried out the fair hearing. But I first had to develop the fair hearing. And I had to think hard about how it is that we hear reality's messages in an unbiased way. How it is we can view reality and what it wants to show us free of all lenses. I had to figure out how to do that. But after doing that, after developing the fair hearing, after spending years going through the fair hearing, I think I'll save that story for later. Maybe next time. I'll simply say, again, A House in Open Country, like science with regard to the material world, A House in Open Country is a method for making sure that the light within us isn't darkness. And if it is, for exposing it. And then in turn, finding the true light. A light that we can have confidence isn't darkness. But which we're always willing to reconsider, knowing that it's always possible that that light could either be darkness or contain darkness. That's always possible. House and Open Country recognizes that, and that's why it's so careful. Like the scientific method, with regard to the material world, the House and Open Country is a method of care with regard to worldview. The end. When I say they want to